Recently, I've been thinking more and more about how to change my narrative style, how to properly tell a travel story, what is needed, what's not needed. This story is not an example of a dramatic shift in that sense, but rather a focus on internal thoughts and feelings. In order to start this properly, however, I want to start outside of my thoughts, but rather surrounded by those of the people I traveled alongside, a very beautiful part of the world.
След гумата това колко е? Да, този 1 метър, метър и половина. Този двоен легло е по-дълъг.
Всичко е окей, поправихме. Много объркано в това. Кое? Тия легла, объркани са, пак не са за легла. Щупани, пак не са за така. Защо?
Ja ako ti je malko što kufar dobro te kažeš. Аз може би ръчно. По-скоро може би.
I think over the last few months and maybe year at this point, endless roads have become such a dominant feature in my periphery vision that it almost feels strange when I'm not dividing my journey with the endless yellow lines across tarmac, passing by trees, and constantly pressing my face up against the front window in an attempt to somehow peel away from the interior of the car and float up into everything that surrounds us. Sometimes, these roads lead into the dense woods of Norway, and those woods carry with them the icy summer winds, the roaring waterfalls somewhere in the distance, and in our case, the curious footsteps that slowly pattered across wet grass and wooden boards in order to come face to face with our first glimpse of a Norway both similar and different from what we had imagined. Here are some first impressions. Norway is a palette made up of the deep, dark shades of grey that cover its rocks as torrents of water rush by. It's made up of the wild, impersonal green that clings to its trees, and sometimes it's also made up of a handful of multicolored travelers found somewhere in between, scattered below as we were. This eclectic mixture is, in some ways, both the start and end of what Central Norway is, in my eyes. Rain led us to this moment, right here. This was perhaps the first moment I was truly in awe of the overpowering beauty of this Scandinavian country. Only in Norway can you find yourself hiding from rain and rushing across train tracks into natural caves on your second day there. And whether it's from the interior of said rock shelter or that of your vehicle, the waterfalls and clouds quickly roll in succession above you, as you somehow feel akin to the first people to step foot on new land. It's a land that's dangerous and perhaps uninviting, but in the end one that does little else if not inspire you to trudge up impossibly tight mountain roads, seemingly not meant for camper vans. But you do so to finally breathe, really breathe in, and to stand above the valleys and impasses that melt before your eyes and sink into the depths of the earth. You do so to quickly become one with the cold air and rain that has long already swept into your bones and that allows you to gaze out at what yesterday was alien, suddenly feeling like you too are a part of the nature that stretches around you. You're not there. You're somewhere else. You've forgotten about what was because the wind is often deafening and has a tendency to erase and remove. It also finds its way upon ferries and starts to throw about the masts.
Няма желащи ли?
Той има.
Там има само овце, братче. Кой да ходи да обикаля по тия острови?
Не знам колко няма желащи, ама с нас колко коли още останаха 3 часа.
Е крайно.
Да.
Просто не ги интересува.
This wind, it follows and carries you and all those that travel alongside you atop the fjords you've heard so much about.
Най-големия казва към 2 пъти е по-голям, значи този е много голям.
Най-големия има 6900 пасажери. Така че това не е малко.
Да, да си има пасажери, нали, обаче. А колко е висок? Иония, да.
These fjords of yesterday, however, don't often let you go so easily. Perhaps there is something to be said about the fact that everything within them somehow feels trapped. Trapped within towering walls with jarring edges. It's almost as though the water that runs down center of them maybe found itself there in a similar way we did, without a real plan or idea of what to expect. And similarly, without plan, we slowly sailed out of this earthly womb and were ready to once again ascend. And ascend we did quickly. We ascend to be able to gaze out at a similar looking fjord, this time made of ice. This, of course, before summiting the highest road in Europe. Finding yourself up there, you feel like the distant mountains stare back with disdain at finding odd vehicles perched atop one of their brothers. Everything here feels built out of legends and housed within the sheer scale of the rock fortresses around you. Sometimes, these rock fortresses belong to more deserving owners. In this case, belonging to the sheep that dot the traditional landscape and that seem immobile until one outstretched hand disrupts their eternal grazing. Sometimes you forget that the background to everything you see in front of you in Norway is something that's reachable. Until you slowly start to head into the corners of your vision amidst the fog and the layers upon layers of cliffs and endless ravine. This was no different when we headed out to the largest glacier in continental Europe. One that is unfortunately melting at a rapid pace and cascading down to meet travelers upon their route. A route that is sometimes broken by the odd group photo.
Сега се направете, че се харесвате и се приближете възможно един до друг.
But then you're there, and said glacier looms above you, one that holds an uncertainty. Will I, in my lifetime, see it again? If not I, what about future travelers and future generations? Something about this country feels eternal and fleeting at the same time. Maybe that's due to the fact that we're always on the road ourselves. A road that can take you from the loftiest physical spaces to the equivalent spiritual houses. All the while, of course, garnished with the subtle rain that follows us to no end. These thoughts, however, are best interrupted by a subsequent attempt to go fishing.
Саша, ако не хвана риба, не знаеш какво ще стане. Слушай, не е смешно.
Можеш бе, абсолютно ауспук.
Дадено слънце има ли си?
Там.
Но там малко по-на юг.
And then again you soar, perched above on a platform with your main company being the wind that rushes past you. Maybe it's not strange to say that suddenly arriving in a town with shops, hotels, and people bustling around was a bit of an odd feeling. Thankfully, the blanket of fog that overtook everything ensured that we never felt too far away from the wilderness around us. We spent the final days of the trip preparing for two final climbs, to the infamous Trolltungen and Preikestolen.
Не трябваше ли да тръгнем по-рано?
Това Мартушата е 6:30, така че има време. 20
Ама то там сигурно ще има целият...
половин час, защото знаем, че закъснее.
Целият норвежки народ ще е там, най-вероятно. Защото едва ли поема 1000 човека. А ние нали трябва да паркираме?
Трябва да паркираме, няма идва, Сашко. Аз трябва да ви така, че ако такова просто ще ви извоза, ако има проблем с това, защото те половината билети са онлайн и няма достатъчно да букнеш онлайн, другата половина са онлайн.
Може да не извозиш догоре до това.
Те викат, че мога аз. Може да не изводи между 2 и 3. Има някъде вид за височината.
Аз не гадното.
Вие лигливци, тук като съм го качвал на времето ти преди 10 години, нито едно, ни две, ни три имаше направо, ти переше от седал нагоре избави.
Getting to the first of the two involved a roughly 5-hour hike amidst the carpet of towering mountains and water that connects them. Finally, you end up at this well-known natural wonder, and despite the amount of people that stood waiting to teeter at its edge, you somehow feel alone. It's a rare thing to say about such a famous location. Finally, we spend the last day hiking up to Preikestolen. Outside of the sheer beauty of finding yourself roughly 600 meters above the fjord below you, perhaps what is most surreal is simply the fact that this natural wonder seems impossibly perfect in design. Stretched out 25 meters in every direction, it's a nearly perfect square platform that we summited in order to be able to witness the ever-changing weather around us. From the downpour that inevitably clung to us on the way up, we were suddenly surrounded by the rising mist that finally gave way to the first real moments of sunlight that we had during our travel. As I already said, this eclectic mix of weather and nature itself was the start and end of my impressions of this beautiful part of Central Norway.